Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 16, going on 17 novels of suspense. My current thriller is All This Could Be Yours, an instant USA Today bestseller, which was just nominated for the Mary Higgins Clark Award. So that is terrific. And my new book, Mother, Daughter, Sister, Stranger, comes out in September, and I'm so happy about that. Today, though, we don't want to talk about my book. I want to tell you all about Our Beautiful Mess by the fabulous Adele Parks. This is her 25th book in 25 years, all bestsellers. She is an incredible rock star. And if you do not know Adele Parks' books yet, that is why we are here today, because this is an author you should know. And the minute you read her novels, you will love them and you will love her. And we were so honored that you are here today. Adele has been on tour in the United States for the past 2 weeks or so, her first US tour for the books. Adele, welcome. You're back home now.
Thank you so much, Hank. It's just amazing. And of course, it's so much lovelier now because we met in real life while I was on my tour, didn't we?
We had the best time at an Unlikely Story bookstore in Plainville, Mass. I know some of you have been there. Kathy Lanigan for sure has been there, and we've seen some of you.
Extraordinary place, isn't it?
Talk a little
Fantastic.
bit about it. What did you think when you walked in, when you saw it?
Well, I didn't know the backstory. I didn't know who owned the store. So I just thought, gosh, this is, it's big and beautiful and bold. And, there's a really fun kids section. And then upstairs where the events are, I've never seen such a professional event space in a bookshop before in my life. And also I knew I had you interviewing me and there were so many lovely faces. So many people had turned up. It was just a joy from start to finish.
It was a wonderful event. This was your first U.S. event for
On the actual day I launched.
And when you all come to the bookstore, An Unlikely Story is owned by Jeff Kinney, who is the author of the Wimpy Kids books. All of you who have any kind of son or grandson know about Wimpy Kids books. It is completely magical, and it was so much fun to talk with you there. So you're home now. You've been on tour. How was the tour? What was it like being in the U.S. for this book?
It was everything I hoped it would be. So I have very much longed for this tour. It's been sort of dangled a few times. Various things happened, the dreaded COVID word. Then it got put back and timings have all been, askew. But eventually I got on this tour. And the reason I really did want to go is whenever I do have any interaction with American readers, you are so enthusiastic. American and Canadian, actually, you really care. I think maybe there is a little bit of reserve in the UK because, of course, we care about books. But I think if the books are read in the UK, they're read, and a few people will say to me, that was marvelous, or I really enjoyed it. But they won't get into the nitty gritty, where just even emails and things I get off Americans really do get into the nitty gritty. And I felt that energy at every single event. People ask great questions. They were really, they'd come. A couple of my events, people had traveled for quite a few hours to get there because, I wasn't doing many and they were spaced out. So people made a huge effort, and that enthusiasm buoys you up. It makes for a really good event.
Because your books are about such relatable people, I think readers see themselves in your book and in your books. And I do think that, I don't know if I can say Americans, but in my experience, we like to share connections. It feels that you're being open to us in your books, and I think there's a sense of feeling that you, as an author, care about your readers so much.
100%. I am a writer because I think I'm a writer because I was a lonely child. So as a lonely child, I spent a lot of time in the public library, and books were my friends. They took me on adventures. They took me out of myself. I realized the world was a bigger place. So even if I was unhappy with the place I was in, I realized there would be more to life. And then I found that not only were books my friends, but they helped me make friends. Because isn't it wonderful when somebody likes a book you like, and there's that sort of connection? I don't know why we suddenly assume that that person, if they've liked the book we like, we must have a certain amount in common, which, it makes sense. And so I genuinely do think the world is far too divided. I'm not even going to say right now, because I think actually the world is quite often divided and has been for a very long time. Um, and actually, that's what we talk about in the news all the time. However, my personal belief is the world is actually also super connected. People feel the same things. People have the same emotions. The same ambitions, the same dreams, the same priorities, which is inevitably usually loved ones. My books have been translated into 31 languages. That just goes to show how universal stories are. How it doesn't matter what culture we come from, people have the same fears, the same hopes, the same dreams. And that's what I write for, so people connect and say, yeah, actually, I do relate to that. Or they might say, that is not how I would have behaved in that situation. But perhaps they'll have a little bit more empathy for somebody they didn't think they would understand.
The empathy element is so important in all novels, but in yours especially, you tap into that and let us walk in someone else's shoes. I never thought before, though, about what it really means to have one's books translated into other languages, because it does mean that at the core of the story is something that is universally connecting, and that it is so lovely to think that a storyteller like you can bring the world together. I know from talking to you earlier, you have a wonderful story about your sister and your storytelling. Did you always want to be an author? Did you always want to be a storyteller?
I wanted to be a storyteller from being a very young girl. And I sort of saw the use of it quite quickly, because when I was a little girl, well, even still, obviously, I have a sister who is 3 years older than I am. And it is the lot of the younger child to just sort of live in awe of the older child. And when I was first born, we shared a bedroom in the first house we lived in. And then we moved house and we got separate bedrooms. And my sister was delighted with this. She wanted her own room, she wanted her own space, she wanted me as far away as she could possibly send me. I, however, was devastated that I no longer had the bottom bunk and couldn't chat to her, and I was in my own room. So I used to beg to go into her room at night, and she wasn't having it. However, one day she was in quite a grumpy mood. She was a teenager, and being in a grumpy mood was sort of, a reasonably frequent thing. And I said to her, what's the matter? And she said, I finished all of Enid Blyton's Mallory Towers, and I finished all of Enid Blyton's St. Clair's. Now, if you're familiar with those books, you'll immediately be whisked back to your childhood, where no doubt you loved them yourselves. If you're not familiar, they're books about British school children who are at boarding school, and it's all jolly hot hockey sticks, and it's midnight feasts, and it's all marvelous. My sister and I did not live in that world. We went to, the normal state school around the corner, but I think she aspired to something that exciting and that sort of glamorous. So I saw an opportunity, and I said to her, oh, actually, I know what happens to the girls from Mallory Towers and from St. Clair's in their holidays. And she said, how in the world do you know? And I said, oh, Enid Blyton sends me her stories, just me personally.
Yes.
Which was totally made up. First of all, Enid Blyton, bless her, had already passed by the time I was having this conversation with my sister. Luckily, there was no Google to check. And she just sort of believed that because I spent so long in our little library locally, that I somehow had this private correspondence. And I said to her, if you let me sleep in your bedroom, I'll tell you what goes on in the holidays. And I just made it up. Obviously, I made it up. And she bought into it, and I told her the stories of the summer holidays between sort of, first year and second year, and what happened in the Christmases. And it just went on for weeks. And that way, I bought my way into her affection, but certainly her room.
That's the best story. You're a little Scheherazade at the time. I absolutely love that. And you were still captivating all of us with your stories. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, welcome, welcome, welcome. Crime Time is part of A Mighty Blaze, which was started at the beginning of the pandemic 6 years ago, remarkably, by the powerhouse duo of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep us reading and keep us together and keep us in a reading and writing community, discovering new favorite books and new favorite authors. And I know Adele Parks will be one of those. And we are still going strong after all this time with a marvelous schedule of authors to come. And today we are so pleased to have Adele Parks. Let me tell you a little bit about Adele. Adele Parks, as I told you, is the Sunday Times #1 best-selling author with more than 6 million English edition books sold. And her books have been translated into, well, this says 31, but it's more than that now, right?
No, I think 31 is about right. Maybe it's 32. I think, yeah.
Even as we speak, 30, in the higher 30s. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II gave Adele the honor of MBE for service to literature in the New Year Honors List 2022. She was awarded an honorary doctorate of letters by the University of Leicester in 2023 and Teesside University in 2009. Adele is an ambassador for literary charities in the National Literacy Trust and the Reading Agency. Her #1 bestsellers, Lies, 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 and Just My Luck, were both shortlisted for the British Book Awards and have been optioned for development in radio, film, and television. Maybe radio too. I'm reading words that are not there.
Why not? Let's have it.
Well, I'll have radio too. It could happen. And her newest bestseller, instant bestseller, is Our Beautiful Mess, which just came out. We were talking about how you always wanted to be a writer. I'll get to Our Beautiful Mess in a minute, but let's tell us the story. What was your first book and why did you write that and what happened with that?
So my first book, 25 years ago, was a book called Playing Away. And here in the UK, we always joke, and it's not about football because we have away games and home games. No, it's about infidelity. And it was a very different book to the kind of books I write now, because I write dark psychological thrillers or family noir. I'm sort of in that crime vibe. However, in my real life, I'm afraid there was quite a lot of, I'm going with the word horror. It's not too harsh a word, because in my mid-20s, I had, in my family, friends and colleagues, a large amount of deaths in just 1 year. And they were very shocking. Some of them were what we might describe as predictable deaths, older people, my grandparents. But deaths included a colleague and her baby to AIDS, my uncle with suicide, a murder, a younger colleague with cancer. There was a lot. And I was only in my mid-20s, and this was just far too much for me to cope with. So I went to see what we called in Britain a grief counsellor, which obviously in North America would be, a therapist. But the Brits we're getting better, but we were very funny in those days about having counsellors or therapists. And people used to stare at me when I told them that I was seeing a therapist, and they'd say, "Are you mad?" And I'd have to say, "Well, a little bit, clearly, because otherwise why would I be going?" But the therapist, I went to her and I said to her, "Look, I find the world so shocking and so scary, and I'm not equipped to deal with it. And I don't want to be in love with anyone. I don't want to love anyone because it's such a risk. You're going to lose them, and I can't cope with that pain." And she said, quite rightly, she passed on some advice that I love to pass on to everybody else that I've ever met since. She said, "Look, Adele, the truth is the world can be harsh and difficult. And all you can do is monitor how you are going to react to the things that are thrown at you." And one of the coping mechanisms that she taught me is, she said, find something in your life that just you are in charge of. It might be baking a cake, it might be gardening, it might be painting a picture, but it can't be dependent on your friends, your family, your partner, your kids, if you have them, can't be dependent on any of those things. It's about you. And I sort of eventually confessed, I do this scribbling. I used to want to be a writer. And she said, "What do you mean scribbling?" And I rummaged in my bag and pulled out a notebook. And it was stuffed with all my ideas and little observations and thoughts and feelings and the things I was processing. And she said, "Oh, do you have many of those, Adele?" And I said, "Oh, probably about 20.
Oh.
And she laughed and said, there might be more to that than scribbling. It might be more than a hobby. You should do more of that if that's the thing that makes you feel happy and in control." And I just started writing a book. I'm quite the girly swot. So she said to me, you should do a little bit more of that. And in my mind, it was like, right, set a goal, write a novel, write the novel you've been talking about writing since you were 7-year-old and entertaining your sister with stories from Enid Blyton. So I set about sort of a few hours twice a week in the evenings and 4 hours at the weekends on a Saturday or a Sunday while I had a full-time job. And it took a couple of years, but I wrote the book playing away. Many drafts. It went from different tenses, past tense to present tense. It went from third person to first person because my first reader said, no, actually, it's not immediate enough. And the character is quite tricky to like because she does a very bad thing. So by putting her in first person and making it more immediate, we perhaps could climb into her skin a little easier. So there were a number of drafts, but on the eve of my 30th birthday, I dropped off the manuscript onto the desk of a chap called Johnny Geller, who at that time was just an up-and-coming agent in an agency I just happened to have read about, and it happened to be around the corner to where I worked. Now he is the CEO of the largest agency in the UK and part of a global company, actually. And I left the manuscript with Johnny and I went back to the northeast of England, North Yorkshire, which is where I'm from. I had the weekend at home celebrating my 30th birthday. At the end of the weekend, I came back down to London and in my flat, my answering machine was flashing. I hadn't even thought to give him my mobile number. I don't think we even had reception up in where I live in the northeast of England back then. And it just wasn't a thought in my head. And the answer machine, I played it and his message was just, I like it. I'd like to meet you and talk to you about representing you. And I couldn't believe it. It was so sudden from couple of years quietly writing this book secretly on my own to suddenly this agent saying he wanted to represent me. And I remember playing this message over and over again. And then he actually took it to 6 publishing houses. And this is really going to annoy people. And I'm sorry because it's annoying, but try not to take it as annoying, try and take it as inspirational because I didn't expect this at all. But all 6 accepted the manuscript. And then they went into a bidding war, which meant I was able to give up my day job because what they were offering to pay me was about 4 years' salary. So that's how I was able to then just go, great. I actually didn't stop working immediately. I worked for about another 8 or 9 months, got pregnant. And then once the baby was coming, I stopped work and suddenly had this dream career and a career that's very flexible as well, which is handy if you're starting a family. So yeah, a little bit annoying, I think, my story. Well, but I balanced it up by saying it's taken me 25 years to crack America.
And you have done that gorgeously, I have to say. But also the lead up to that wonderful moment on your birthday weekend was quite a journey. And that acceptance of your coping mechanism that turned into being a bonanza, how has that changed your view of yourself and the world and people's capability of being happy in a sad time?
Okay, I genuinely believe that things can always get better. I believe that in every aspect of my life. I believe that in a micro way, and I believe it in a macro way. I don't believe anything's impossible. I think we just may not have discovered the answers yet. And I have a very optimistic view of the world. I'm I'm quite a realist in many ways. Somebody said to me the other day, "You're such an optimist, but with a really steely core." And I thought, "Oh, actually, well done for noticing," because I think that is who I am. I'm not a pushover, but I do believe there is space for people to be optimistic. I believe all bad times do pass. I believe all bad times will come. Um, and I don't think anyone can avoid that. Not if you're feeling, not if you really have a heart and you're out there in the world caring for anything. Then at some point something will go wrong, because that is, whether that's a health problem or a career problem, or if you lose somebody, a divorce. There are a number of things, and I have had things since, of course I have. And actually, this sounds dreadful, but somebody said to me not that long ago, "You're very good around death, aren't you?" I was like, very odd compliment, but I'll take it.
Oh.
And I knew what she meant. She meant it didn't phase me, and that I was able to sort of ask questions,
Well,
talk to
you embrace. I mean, as my old English professor used to say, you embrace the human condition, and we handle it the best we can, which is just exactly what our beautiful mess is about. I know this has sound a little peripheral to you all, and thank you so much for coming. Look who's here: Melanie is here, and Vicki Gregory, Sue Street, Litamy is here. That brand new. Andrew Ball is here, Betty Fellows, Julie Brinkley, Mary Garrett, Renee, Sue Street. Oh, Robin, Julie, this is so great. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for everybody who's applauding. Everybody is applauding you in the comments. I hope you get to look at that in a minute. And you know that if you leave a question or a comment or just general adulation for Adele, you'll be entered to win a copy of Our Beautiful Mess when we spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show. So keep those questions and comments coming. Even if you just love Adele, just tell her that in the comments. You can't get enough of that. Anyway, Our Beautiful Mess is beautifully wonderful, gorgeously written, incredibly twisty and suspenseful and surprising and supremely relatable and emotional. Can you tell us a little bit about this book, and then we'll sort of dive into some of the themes of it?
I will. So the book starts, you open it up and it says the end. And your first thought is, goodness, there's something's gone wrong with the printing process. Why would I start at the end? And you realize that as a reader, you burst onto a scene where somebody is being held at gunpoint and then somebody is shot. And Connie, our heroine, or one of our heroines actually, is trying to stem the blood flow. It isn't clear whether this is Connie's wound or somebody she loves deeply, but it's a clearly very tragic situation. It is, in fact, the end for somebody. And then you turn the page and it says 11 days earlier, and we see Connie very comfortably up her stepladder, putting an angel on the top of her Christmas tree. At that point in Connie's life, all she really is concerned about is the excitement that her eldest two daughters are coming home for the holidays, for Christmas, and that her and her husband and her family and her younger daughter will all be together. And better yet, that the eldest daughter is bringing her boyfriend home for the very first time. And Connie's ecstatic about the idea of young love being part of her Christmas. She's worried about her Instagram posts and whether her charcuterie board is going to look super. She hasn't got anything on her mind, but you, as a reader, are already a step ahead of her. You know she's on a countdown. And indeed, the moment Connie's eldest daughter walks down the garden path with her new boyfriend, Connie realizes that he is intrinsically linked to the one mistake she has made in her life 2 decades before. And it is a mistake that could blow up her carefully constructed perfect family. Now, I always hesitate to use the word perfect. Connie's perfect family, she is quite aware, is still sort of scrappy and angry at times, but there is a lot of love. That seems bad enough, that she knows that her daughter's love and that she's very excited about is somewhat marred, maybe doomed, because of her own secret, because goodness, what do we want to do but protect our children? How awful if we're going to bring hurt into their lives. But worse than that, very soon, and this is still all chapter 1, so it's not spoilers, Fran, Connie's daughter, announces she's pregnant. So this isn't a fleeting relationship. This is an in there going to be a permanent relationship. It's not Connie's plan. Worse yet, every single person in that Christmas holiday period, every single person in that family has a secret. And for an ostensibly very loving family, they're managing for different reasons to keep things from one another. And we know that that's going to tumble and twist and turn, and it's going to end with that somebody held at gunpoint.
Well, that very suspenseful beginning is such a dark cloud over the gorgeous and happy and lovely, maybe 2 pages of the beginning of the first chapter before the sounds of da dum da dum da dum, the sinisterness approaching comes. But every book, and this is such a family drama and such a family saga with so many tendrils, luring people back into situations that they have been in the past and linking them together so gorgeously. But what was the nugget that began the first domino that fell to write this particular story?
I think with this book, it's a book about being a parent or a child. Now, not everybody has children, but we have all been children. We all do have parents or have had parents. And it means such a wide range of things to people. It can be the best thing in your world. It can be the most damaging thing in your world if you get the wrong sort of parents or you don't get the support you would hope for. And this is an examination of how far Connie would go for her children, who she does still see as children, even though one of them is now pregnant and going to have a child of her own. So it's about that sort of mama bear coming out in her. But in fact, it's not just from a mother's point of view. It is from Fran's point of view. It is from Fran's boyfriend's point of view. It's from some of the male parents, older parents' points of view. There are a lot of people involved here. And I just think it's a universal truth that the most important thing to us is who we care about. And that gives us the meaning. And we think it might be, and in the book, they think it might be money or power or control or whatever it might be. But in the end, the thing you will probably go the furthest for is those you love.
Does this not sound great, you all? This is absolutely a terrific book. And this is a standalone. You can run, click, 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 get this book instantly and read just this book if you've never read another Adele Parks book in your life, and you will instantly read all the rest. But this is linked to an earlier book and the story about where Connie came from.
It really
is. So powerful.
Yes. So if you remember, I was just talking about my very first novel, the one that went to 6 publishing houses and sparked a bidding war. But I did say to you, in a way, it's a very light book. There is a character in it who's in her late 20s at that point, and her name is Connie. And she does make a mistake, and it blows up her world. When I was promoting that book 25 years ago, nearly everybody who used to come to my events were in their late 20s, perhaps early 30s, and they were enjoying this sort of slightly dark romance, but it was a romance, and they were enjoying that. And one woman in the audience had brought her mum being the age I am now. And I remember that mother saying to me, "Goodness, Adele, I loved Connie. She was amazing." And I was really pleased because, she didn't seem to be my target audience age-wise. It was a good lesson for me to realize that actually target audiences oughtn't to be assumed. And then she said to me, "And I can't wait till Connie goes through the menopause." And I was sort of taken aback and quite surprised, not least because people didn't say menopause out loud back in 25 years ago. But secondly, I realized she believed in Connie so much, she thought she was going to age, which of course, Connie couldn't age. She's on the page. That is where she is. She can go inside lots of other people's homes and heads. But one of the things she can't do is age unless I allow her. So I made a little promise to myself that if I was still writing when I was that woman's age, I was some level of midlife, and I would write Connie's story. It isn't about Connie's menopause, but it is about some of the things that affect midlifers, partly that sandwich generation when you've got your parents staying with you, but you're also looking after wayward teens. She has all the wayward teen issues to deal with. She didn't want this pregnancy. That's not part of Connie's plan for her children. So that was sort of part of it. So I took poor Connie from this very pleasant, sort of light book, and I dragged her into this really quite dark drama. But she holds her own. I think she keeps her chin up. She's aged well. And it was a joy revisiting her. I have actually revisited her a couple of times. 7 years after Playing Away, I wrote a book called Young Wives' Tales. And 10 years after that, I wrote a book called Lies, Lies, Lies. And in all of them, Connie is in there. She may not be the lead, she may be in the background somewhere, but her and her cohort, her husband, her best friends, her children, they pop up. But they're all, you are able to read any one of them in any order. I always think it's a little like when you meet somebody, you meet them in that moment. You meet what's going on then, and that's how you will meet Connie. And if you love her, you might decide to dig deeper and go further back.
Exactly. If you have never met Connie before, this is a perfect place to come and contact her with her for the first time. You said the word generational, and this is such a multi-generational book where you, Adele, as an author, inhabit the persona of several point of view characters, multi-generational characters. And it's such a tour de force in this book, how when you are Connie, you see the world through Connie's eyes. And when you are the other characters, you see the world through their eyes with their vocabulary and their feeling of responsibility and their desires. And as you say, their hopes and fears and dreams. How do you download or method act to give us so purely the voices of so many different, not so many different, but such different characters?
Before I start, I do have a little technique, which is I like to interview my characters, which sounds a little bit bonkers, but it's what I do. I have a range of about 200 questions, and I don't sit down and ask them all 200. In my head, I might ask them a few questions, and they'll start fleshing out, their age, their gender, maybe, are they in a relationship? Do they have children? But to me, they're just biological details. I then might start asking them questions. If you do have children, do you have a favorite? Something nobody would really admit out loud. Or did you have a favorite parent? Were you the child they liked? Were you the child that annoyed them? I might ask them if they respect their boss or if they feel they should have their boss's job. I might ask them what's their biggest secret. Is there anything in this world that they have not told a soul? And slowly but surely, I start to have a conversation with the characters, and they will move me where they want to take me. Because of the answers that they give, I start to put the bricks on and build their sort of character. And then I do that for quite a long time. I do it for a good few months, whilst I'm also developing plot. And all of this is in my head. I don't write much down. But the day I start writing, and I do have a bit of a sort of, I always know where I'm going. I am a plotter to a reasonably strong extent. So I will know I'm going to throw certain things at these characters who I know quite well. But what I don't know exactly is how they will articulate their reaction. I know what their reaction will be because I know them quite well, so I can sort of guess at it. But sometimes they still do surprise me. And that was really important in this book because honestly, it was a little easier to write Connie. She has been with me on and off for 25 years. She is around my age. I'm a mother, she's a mother. There are things I could see, although actually I have one son and she has 3 daughters. So I don't have daughters, and yet I did write about the mother-daughter relationship. That's, very, very intrinsic to the book. So there were things that I had to reach into my imagination, and honestly, that's the more fun bit. The bit of the character that is more like me isn't as fun to explore as the person who is so dissimilar to me, whether that's somebody who's incredibly ruthless and violent, or a killer, or whether that's a young man who's making some dreadful mistakes and making some dreadful decisions. I did have to, with my Gen Z chapters, written from Fran's point of view and from her boyfriend Zach's point of view. I did have to get my Gen Z son and some of his friends to read through the scripts and just check that, I had context right and I had the story sort of, well, not so much the story, but the sort of vocabulary sounded authentic to them, because I do want younger people to be reading my books. I want anyone to be reading my books, again, for this reason of connection and walking in one another's shoes. The whole point of this book for me is, whilst Connie and Fran are a generation apart and they may articulate their problems quite differently and they may think they are very different, in fact they are quite similar. When Connie was a young woman, she'll have worried about her looks, her diet, her boyfriend, her friendship groups. When Fran's a young woman, she worries about how she presents herself, her sexual health, her support group. They are the same things, they just have a different vocabulary attached to them. And I sort of wanted to make that point because I hear so much all the time about the divides between boomers, millennials, boomers, Gen Y, millennials, Gen Z. And look, I'm getting confused even saying them, because why have we got so many divisions? We used to just have people who had different ages, but now we have these sort of, well, if you're a Gen Z, you think like this and you believe this, and these are your problems and these are your ambitions. And then if you're a millennial, it's a different set of problems and conditions, etc. And I think it's just part of what's dividing us right now. There are friendships to be had, multi-generational. There are relationships to be built through those friendships to find connections.
And you say it so specifically, actually, at one point in the book. And one of the things that's so lovely that progresses through the novel is that some of the characters begin to specifically understand the other's point of view. To say, oh, I now see the world from your point of view, fill in the character blank name, which was so lovely. And part of the feeling of empathy that this book engenders is walking a mile in someone else's shoes.
And I also have a little bit of fun with it, and please don't anybody be offended. But, Connie's reeling from the shock that her eldest daughter, who's at university and had a glittering career in front of her, is pregnant. And it's very early, and it's not what she planned. And then her daughter starts talking about they and them when she refers to the baby. So suddenly Connie panics and thinks she's having twins. And Fran explains, no, I just don't want to gender this baby. And the poor deaf grandma is sort of, trying to follow the conversation and still convinced at the end of the conversation that her granddaughter's having twins. And I was just having a bit of fun there as well, because it was a sort of, for Connie, it was if you don't laugh, you'll cry moment. But I do think that sort of thing is something we all get hung up on. I hear it often that people have no patience for the sort of declaration of whether you're going to be he, she, they. But it's important to lots of groups of people. So perhaps other groups of people shouldn't quite dismiss it. But equally, I would like to be able to take the mick, have some fun with it, because that's what my generation was able to do.
And you so immerse us in that with this, because there are so many characters who we love and connect with in this novel, and we begin to see that the world and their world is a puzzle full of puzzle pieces that fit together in some way, and in some ways they look different to different people. The world looks different to different people, and that's part of the fun for the reader, is sort of the dramatic irony of that we often know more than the characters know.
Yes,
talk a little bit about that, and is that fun to write?
It is. I mean, I think the readers are on my side, aren't they? We're together in this. I've written this book. You've been kind enough to dedicate some time to reading it. So we're already a team. But my job to the reader surely has to be to entertain, to give a sense of, you want to know what's next. You're turning pages to try and work out what's going on here, what's next. But there is a little bit of fun, isn't there, if you know a bit more than someone else? That's true in real life, isn't it? Knowledge is power, and we all love a little bit of that. So if you're sort of omnipresent, omnipotent as a reader, and you can be flicking pages and working out what's happening and think, oh, I've got this, I've got this. And then what I like to do as the writer is surprise you again, give you yet another twist, something that perhaps you weren't expecting, that you hadn't looked out for. But the minute you see it, the minute you're presented with it, you believe nothing else could be more true and that it's absolutely authentic for you.
And
that's sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's the joy of it for me. That's my intellectual puzzle that I set myself when I'm writing it. So, and I say intellectual puzzle, that's not at the cost of emotions and all the other good bits that have to come into the book. But the puzzle of the plot, especially in thrillers, I think is a really fun thing to share with the reader.
And one of the things that I think you do so deftly and gorgeously and seamlessly is you take a really solid, twisty, surprising plot, and we are surprised at every turn, and weave through this gorgeous, relatable, believable emotion so that it is a plot and character-driven story throughout, which your readers are smart, and I think I can guess what's going to happen in books. And you just surprised me throughout this book on so many levels. Is that, and we were talking about how much fun that is to write, but I wonder if you think about the reader as you're writing this and how much fun we're having reading this. The twisty, go ahead.
That's interesting because I think of the reader as a concept, really, when I'm writing. So I don't think of individual readers, because honestly, once you do, it's merry hell. It really is. Because, if you imagine your mum reading one of your books, or, that's not great. Or if you imagine somebody and think, oh, is that going to offend them? Or is this going to upset so-and-so? Or is this too gory for somebody else? Once you start doing that, you'll end up with a fairly basic mush of a book. So whilst I am aware there will be an audience, praise be, and that people will want to read my book, when I'm actually writing it, I am thinking about the characters. I am thinking about their worlds, and I stay in that process, because if they're authentic and they are reacting to the twists and turns of this plot and they're staying with their emotions, I know that when I get to the end of it, that will work for a reader. But as I'm writing, I don't think, gosh, will this shock a reader, or will this surprise a reader? I mean, I'm sure it must be there, as I say, as a concept in my head somewhere, but Connie might do something, I think, this will shock her husband. I'm more, and obviously if it shocks her husband, who is a character, it's going to shock the reader too. But in my head, I'm more concerned. Or if Fran has another secret from her mother, I think, when Connie finds this out, she's going to be devastated. So I think I stay in with the characters.
And I see that in your book so beautifully. One of the things that I think happens when you're really into a book is you think about, you're holding this world in your head, and the desires and hopes and secrets that every character has, and how the dominoes will crash against each other to change everyone's lives. But wow, Adele, you are the queen of secrets and the queen of twists. When a secret emerges for you in the book, do you laugh and think, "Oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. I never would have seen this coming"? Or are you surprised?
Well, most of them are plotted. So most things I know are coming, and they're plotted.
But they have to occur to you at some point, even if
yes, that's true. That is true. Usually when I'm on a walk, actually, walking is really good for plotting in my world. I live very close to an area of outstanding natural beauty in Surrey, in the south of England now. And you can literally walk into those hills from my house. And I quite often do if I am chewing over a plot point. And when I think of something either ghastly or shocking or surprising, I do get a little giggle, really. I think, oh, that's it. Because obviously you think of things and you think, that's not quite it, or that's not enough, or, well, that wouldn't work. So all the things writers have to reject, and we do reject so many things. We literally reject thousands of things per paragraph, because even if you're describing a room, You have to sort of decide, is it going to have wallpaper? Is it going to have colored walls? Is it going to have lamps? Is it going to have books?
Isn't that so
You know,
interesting how you, in your mind, it's a red leather couch and you see it and you think, no, it's an oatmeal tweed couch, and bling, or no, it's a green velvet thrift shop antique, bling, and the picture in your mind changes as
changes.
you
And
it's
you might not even put that in the book. You
yeah.
might not say that they were sitting on a green velvet couch. You might, but you might not. But it just helps solidify the world, which I think means it is a more comfortable process for the characters, because you are you are in it with them, and you're giving them the space for them to react. I do think I sometimes get sort of a sense of, I might want them to be somewhere in the development of my plot, and I realize they're not there yet. They couldn't have made that emotional leap, or they weren't invested in a person enough to care if they were at that point in the plot. So I realized that, oh, hang on, I'm not there yet. I might need an extra chapter or two. And that does definitely happen.
I love that, though, that realization of what an author or what a writer needs to do at a certain point. It's
It just
such a
starts to come
gift.
to you, doesn't it, Hank?
Yeah.
People quite often ask me and say, "Oh, what do you measure out your beats? Do you know?" And you sort of think, "No, it's not really that. It's the same as when you're reading. Sometimes you could be reading something and you think, "Wow, this is so perfectly paced. I'm with it." And other times you think, "Gosh, that went a bit fast. I didn't get it," and you need to go back and reread it. And other times you think, "Oh, it's so slow," you give up on it. Somehow, I think as a writer, that's your job, to try your very best to get that pacing correct, and to make the characters seem believable, that they are living and breathing, because their pace is like a real human being's.
Yes, their pace is like real life, and this is how
Yeah.
real the most exciting things that could possibly, or scary, or sinister, or terrifying, or shocking, or unbelievable things that could happen in a real life family happens in Our Beautiful Mess. I have two more questions for you, and then Jade, we can have some questions from the audience. Would be lovely. I see so many of them. Hey, Shannon Hansen, and hey, Suzanne. Lori is here, and Vicki Gregory says, I love plot walks. And Kathy Lanigan says, I can't wait to read Our Beautiful Mess. Welcome, Kathy Lanigan. We were talking outwardly on Instagram, when everybody was listening, about what we would call our beautiful mess. That is it. I call it a book club suspense. And you call it, what do you call it, Adele?
Well, I came up with one in America, really, went on my American tour last week. We called it a thrill romance, thrillmance, or because it has relationships, but it is a thriller. I think it is. I think it's an emotional family drama, but I think you need the word dark in there, because it's not about, somebody's will and people feeling rejected by their father or something like that. There is violence, I don't want to tell you what type of
well, there's certainly
crime, but there is crime as well. Yeah.
Crime and violence, and the threat of crime and violence. And destruction, essentially
Yes.
destruction of so many things. And we will
I mean,
just
I feel sorry for my publishers, because I sort of deliver up a book and then they say, "Oh, what genre?" And I'm like, "Oh, you decide," and I sort of give it to them. I think this cover does a really good job of sort of saying, it does have a threat. I think what's behind closed doors immediately makes you think, oh, hang on, something I shouldn't know about, or some level of secret. But also, a door is very domestic. So, yeah.
and also the layers, that there are layers that need to be peeled back.
And a mess. It's already a mess. It's already been ripped up. Yeah.
What a beautiful mess, as are many of our lives. But there are some parts of your life that are, and then I'll get to the questions from the fabulous audience. The pace is real life, says Julie Brinkley. That is good. Yes, exactly. Thank you for that. You give back so much to the community for literacy and for reading. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you do that and how that has changed your life and the lives of others as well?
I mean, I alluded very briefly that when I was a little girl, I have an older sister, and it is the way of older sisters. You're always sort of hanging around for them. Their school hours are slightly longer, their clubs are slightly longer, their extracurricular clubs, etc. And my family lived quite a distance from the school, a few miles, and my mom didn't have a car. So I used to wait for my sister to finish school or whatever club in the local library. And then my mom would pick us both up, and there'd only be one walk home. And it changed my life. I mean, I mentioned as well that I wasn't a particularly happy child, and I was quite a lonely child. And being in a library offered me so many opportunities. It offered me so much because it offered me education. There were words I had never come across, and I would underline them, and then I would go and look them up. Then there would be so there's education, the empathy, because I suddenly realized, whilst I might be feeling a certain way and I might be worried about my little world, there were bigger worlds out there that some were to be with more worries and some with fewer, but they offered me that. They offered me entertainment and escapism, all the good E subjects here. But the entertainment and the escapism allowed me to grow in my ambitions and in my view of what might be possible in my world and many other people's worlds. I think that was such a gift, and it's so, it's free. Libraries are free. Reading is cheap or free, depending on where you are in the world. I think it should be a basic human right that you are allowed to read, because it's such an equalizer, but it is an equalizer at a high height because it brings everybody up. It doesn't push everybody down, it brings everybody up. And I would just like a world where it doesn't matter where you're born. There are some parts of Britain that, same as any developed country, there are more affluent areas and there are less affluent areas. And the less affluent areas are, the exam results are poorer, the unemployment is higher, the health is poorer, the life expectancy is shorter. All of that, I believe, can be rectified if a person starts reading quite early on. So with some of the, or by the way, starts reading very late on, but just reads. Some of the charities I'm involved in are literally cradle to grave. We bring books into prem units where babies have been born prematurely and give children's books to parents so that the parents can read to the child and the child can connect with that voice, and the neurons that are necessary are being fired off in the brain and the bonding is happening. All the way through, there's various different literary schemes to, keep teenagers interested, to get homeless people reading, to, all sorts of things, right to old age pensioners who are maybe thinking that there's not much to their days, but what if they had a library in their pensioner home? So yes, I do. And another part of it is women who are maybe escaping domestic abuse, and they've had to leave their home with nothing, no clothes, let alone books, because they've had to look as though they were popping out to the shops. And I like to try to stock libraries in those centres, because those women really do need some escapism and they really need to see that the world is bigger. But they quite often arrive shell-shocked. And so it just is a way of easing people into their own world via some fictional worlds. I just can't see a downside to reading. I can't see it. It's good for your mental health. It's good for community building. It's good for your education. I just think it's there. Why wouldn't we all benefit? It's a way of holding on to our history. It's the way of anticipating our future and perhaps helping us to manage our futures a little bit better. I just think there's so, I could go on all night.
Well, I wish you could, and I wish we could have you be here for longer. You are absolutely a joy and just a treasure. And
As you are.
Thank you. And you have changed the world so much for so many people. We're so grateful that you are here today. I am such a massive fan.
And I am of you. I always feel in these situations, it's so silly because, you are also such a phenomenal writer. And I always just want to say, but your books are marvelous. You know all of this too. Yeah.
Thank you. And isn't that one of the terrific things about this world that we live in, is that you can love Adele's books and you can love my books. And doesn't that make everything
No,
so much better? And every one of us, every one of you in the chat, Bonnie and Lori and Andrew and Sherry in the chat and Sue, have favorite books. And as Adele said at the beginning of the show, when we read the same book and love the same book, that instantly brings us together. And that is about as good as it gets. Speaking of as good as it gets, isn't it? Speaking of as good as it gets, let's talk to you all, you lovely Blazers who are here at Crime Time. Jade in the back room, who has a question for Adele? Hey, Julie Brinkley, do you write at home or do you have a favorite place outside the house where you write your novels? Hey,
I write the vast majority at home. This is not my office. This is actually my husband's office. My office is next door, but I have a very white background. I've got a lovely colourful wall opposite me because I like to look at colour. And I have a whole range of my international books to my left and a big window to my right. But it doesn't make a very good Zoom background because it is a very white background. This is my husband's more sort of, warm and fuzzy room. I think his looks at anyway. It's not, by the way, but it looks a little bit more. So I write from home. But if I'm somewhere and I get an idea, I always have a notebook on me, and I'm very happy to scribble something down if I'm sat in, a cafe or I stood at a tube station and I overhear a conversation. I think, well, that's marvelous, and the way it's said is quite special, and I bet I don't remember it when I get home. So I will write that down. And I'm not very good at sort of writing on a laptop on the move. If I'm on the move, it's pen and paper, and if I'm at home, it's my big computer.
Do you have a special kind of notebook that you love?
No, I have lots of notebooks. I like stationery and I get gifted it and I buy it all the time. All my friends and family are always buying me little cute notebooks because they know
I love little notebooks with little ribbons and little pencils.
Yes.
I always hate to write on them. I always hate to write on the first page. I always write on the second page.
Oh, nice. Also, a lot of pens sink through, don't they? So I quite often leave pages. My husband finds me very chaotic because also I could just open it in the middle of a page.
I do too. Just where it's where it opens. It makes sense. Totally makes sense. We'll find it because we know what it looks like.
Yes.
Who else has a question? Sherry, what was the best thing you did in the US?
Oh, I did so many great things. I really did. So it was the tour. It was the fact that the tour happened. And I joked to people and I say, I was a 25-year overnight success. And that was amazing. Then I went to LA because we have friends in LA, and I caught up with Sasha Peters. And you might be thinking, oh, I know that name. She played Alice in Pretty Little Liars, and I know a lot of people watched that, but she also played the lead in my film adaptation of one of my novels, The Image of You. And she actually played two leads because she had to play twins, Zoe and Anna from The Image of You. And we filmed that about 2 years ago, and we struck up such a close friendship. She's an incredible woman, very young woman, super hardworking, super talented, beautiful. If she wasn't so lovely, people would probably, roll their eyes, but she is so lovely. So I met up with her and 4 of her girlfriends, and we did a lovely podcast together, and that was great fun. On Valentine's Day, there was a lot of...
Did you have any American type food? Did you see anything that you...
Brilliantly. We've come home actually and been a bit miserable about our food. First of all, we have to cook it and wash up afterwards. But we just ate so well. I had oysters in Boston. Mm-hmm. I love oysters. That was the other thing. We got fresh snow in Boston. I know you're all over it now if you've had a lot of storms, and I get that. There's nothing more inconvenient than extreme weather. But when we were there, just after our event, Hank, we went to a lovely restaurant. Got back to central Boston and we went to this lovely restaurant that was a sort of speakeasy-ish kind of place. And as we left, the snow was falling and it just felt so magical. So yeah, we had so many good times.
And Andrew was asking, will you come back for
your... Yes, I love I love the States, and I come to the States a lot. I shall be there. I shall be in New York in April because I will be there for my husband's film premiere of a film he's produced, and that will be so exciting because I get to be corporate wife and sort of relax a little bit and watch him running around. But I have another book coming out towards the end of this year called Eyes on You, and I'm desperately hoping that I'm allowed to come back on another tour towards the end of the year.
Well, I hope to see you in Boston on that tour.
Well, I'd be there in a heartbeat.
And I know that we'll have you here on Crime Time for that book that comes out in August. Did you say August?
I think it's very late August. They haven't quite pinned it down. In the UK, I know it's the 27th. I think usually you come out on a Tuesday, we come out on a Thursday. So yours might be the 25th, or it might be the week after, the first week of September.
Well, that's when my book comes out. So come to the United States and we will.
Or we can just go on tour together.
Would that not, that would be blockbuster.
It would be the best. It would be so much fun. I'm actually going to pick up with you on that.
This is where you heard it first, you all. We cooked up this scheme here on Crime Time. Jade, do we have time for one more question? We are so over time today, but let's just take one more question for Adele, where it's the middle of the night in the UK. I forgot about that. Miriam says, what are some of your favorite novels?
Oh, good question. Well, I have just had a really great reading week, but I'm often reading in advance of books that have been published. So I have just read a book called Yesteryear, which will be coming out in the UK and I think in the US at the same time, if not a little earlier in the US, coming out in April. It's fantastic. It's absolutely extraordinary. And I didn't guess the end. And I normally can guess ends. I couldn't work out what was going on. It's about a trad wife who is an Instagram influencer. And maybe not, she is authentic. You can decide. How authentic are our Instagrammers? And she has the perfect cowboy husband, the beautiful family. She makes her own sourdough. Then one day she wakes up and she's in a sort of echo of the world she had lived in. She has her children, but they're not quite her children. Her husband's there, but he's a bit off. The house is all a bit off. Is she in a reality TV show? Is she being tested by God because she has got, she's part of a very deep religion, so she thinks that could be something that was happening for her. Is it some kind of crime? Has she been abducted? I genuinely didn't know. So that's an amazing book to look out for. There's also a book that's coming out in the UK. I wonder if it's coming out in the US. It's called People Pleaser by a woman called Bryony Gordon, who is a journalist. And that's terrific. It's more of a comedy, really, but a comedy with a real heart, yes, but also a really serious message about people pleasing and when do we set our own boundaries and when do we start looking after ourselves. And basically the message is put your seatbelt on first. I'm a big fan, obviously, of Hank's. I think you've gathered that from this conversation, but I'm also a big fan of Lisa Jewell's books. I have Ginny McAllister's books. I read Lucy Foley. I read Lisa Unger. So yes, I think I probably read what you're reading.
I think so too. I think all of us together have the same circuit that we've all heard now about Yesteryear, and we're getting some comments about Yesteryear that people are getting the arc. I don't have it yet, so.
Oh my goodness, Hank, get your hands on it.
I will get my hands on that.
So good, and it's an American author, and it's beautifully written. It's so well written. There's just sort of descriptions of the country that are amazing, and you sink into.
I hope you'll get to come back and actually see those parts.
I would love that. I will say, because I know we have overrun, if anybody does want to catch up with me, just find me on my socials. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. I don't do much, but I do a lot on those two, but I don't do many channels. But yes, catch me there and I will answer questions there too.
Marvelous. I think that Jade has put those social media links in the chat as well. And if you want to talk to Adele, she'll come back and look at the Facebook chat at some point, because you will love all the adulation and applause and affection for you, Adele.
Thank you so much.
Our readers. One of our lucky readers will win a copy of our beautiful mess. Let us spin the wheel of fun. and see who that is going to be. Look at all the people here today. That is marvelous. Someday we'll get music for this. I know we will. It really should have it. And the winner is Litomi. Litomi. I think you are new. I'm not sure I've seen you here on Crime Time before. So that is great. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And you will just email me. Jade will tell you in the chat where to email me, and I will email Adele's people, and we will get you a copy of Our Beautiful Mess. The rest of you, you know what to do. Run, 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 click, click, click. Get your own copy of A Beautiful Mess and follow Adele on Facebook and Instagram via the links that are in the chat right now. Adele, I hope you'll come back.
Always. You know that. You know that, Hank. I would literally hang out all day doing this, or night in my case.
No, forgive me. I just forgot that it's 10 o'clock at night, or whatever it is for you. Thank you for staying up late to be with us. 2 more seconds. Let me tell you that next week on Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET, we will be talking to Isha Rhea about You'll Never Forget Me. Look at her. She's either very, very scary or very, very hot. I'm not sure which of those. A little bit of each. Have you read this?
No, I'm saying she's both. She's very scary and very hot.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I know this book will be good. This is what I'm doing the minute I get off the show today, is I'm going to start this beautiful book, and I will see Isha and you next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET. Adele, thank you again for being here today, and congratulations on yet another marvelous book. We are waiting for book 26, and next week we will see you all right here on Tuesday at Crime Time. Until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book.